Hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to dotAGE. This is the game that we're going to review today. If you've missed out, I reviewed Moria last week or a few days ago, or whatever, whenever. It feels like a week ago. Great game, really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed doing the review, such as it is. It's just me yelling into a microphone. I'm not going in here with dot points or some floral bloody essay, some 10-page script that I wrote, and that's more important to me than actually telling you about what the game's about. But I digress immediately. My point is, I'm just a dude. I'm just a gamer that wants to share my thoughts with you on a game, and hopefully that helps whether you want to put it on your radar. I do have sort of an objective ground rule. I'm massaging the specific number, but the way I think it is, if you ask me for X dollars, then I don't think it's unreasonable that I ask you give me X hours of clean gameplay, right? No bloat or anything like that, and we'll work it out as we go. But generally speaking, it's about $5 Australian dollars per hour, right? Example, if you ask for $10 of my money, I ask that you give me 2 hours of good, solid, clean fun. And I do not think this is unreasonable. And I think these game companies that give you overpriced shit, bloated games are gaslighting you. So that is that's pretty much my only metric. As far as dotAGE goes, or dotAGE, sorry, it absolutely passes with flying colours. I've played it for 5.5 hours, which pretty much matches the price point, which is what, $26.50 Australian. And I've barely scratched the surface, and I have loved every second of it. There's so much more content there, and it treats you with respect. So that's all you need to know, right? If you just want to trust me, I can say it's worth the money, and you're probably going to get 10 times that out of it as well. It really does respect your time. And it manages things like meta progression insanely well. In a world where games, especially like roguelikes, run-based games, tow you along in such a way that it becomes a crap grind because the end game is the real focus. And so you just have to eat shit and play the first 90% of the game, you know, in a crap version of the build, basically, until you've unlocked all this stuff. That's not what this is at all. Early going, you have very much small, micro village management, but as it's going along, it is actually meting out the progress in such a way that the game is fun every step of the way. And for some reason, game devs have forgotten that that's important, but this game nails it. Anyway, so what is dotAGE? Well, you can see there, it's essentially a colony management game. I do say run-based, light roguelike, whatever, because it does have meta progression between runs. You have sort of like an unlock meta currency. It's called memories. You have like an elder that leads your town, and he's kind of telling the story of your town, sort of like the old Prince of Persia game. Not the old one, but the first remake. My God, we're about to get another one. But yeah, he's like, oh yeah, I think I remember this, I remember that, and that sort of fleshes out your tech tree for future runs as you go, and you pretty much unlock that currency of unlocking his memories just by passing events, just by passing time, right? As a doom event comes upon your town, he will prophesize. It doesn't really matter that much, but he'll prophesize, oh shit, there's going to be an illness outbreak or whatever, and as you pass through that, whether you pass or fail it, it will give you this progress currency that gets cashed in, and you unlock more memories, and it fleshes the game out. And so it's not just like +1 battle axe crap, right? It goes from, you've just got your little villagers interacting with their plots, like, you know, hey, go over here and fish, go over here and gather, and then you go over here and build or whatever, and you've got resource management, all that sort of stuff. So it's pretty basic, but these memory things that he unlocks are essentially gameplay mechanics. And the tree is miles long. Like, I've barely gotten through any of it. It's added in things like quirks and interpersonal stuff. So you have dudes start becoming, like, at the end of a turn, you have these mini events where two dudes might just become friends, right? And they all get random names, and now they're friends, and that affects future events as well. There's also negatives, like someone might become a coward during a fear scenario. And in the future, when you have fear events, that dude will sort of be the fulcrum point of what happens in the event, right? The known village coward starts doing cowardly things. It's actually incredible, and it adds a lot of depth to what could just be a very it's mechanically solid, but it could be devoid of soul, of life. It's a weird comparison But think of how in XCOM you get your random little characters that you start to get attached to, and then after 5 or so missions, the emergent storytelling, it's such a played out frigging term, but that's what it is, and I think XCOM does it probably one of the best, that when your soldier does die, they've had this cradle to grave story that you will carry with you personally. And this kind of does something similar in this different genre, in this city builder. So yeah, essentially you basically just plug them in and say, mate, you build this, so you plop it down on the land. It's all got complex interplay that compounds over time. Example, you can make a forager. The forager will have a restraint saying, put this next to a forest area. And the game helps you. It shows you where you can and can't put it. But then he'll harvest 2 berries. Or you can tell him to forage different stuff. Forage hemp, for example, right? More mid-game resources. But then you've got, let's say, another example would be a hunter. Hunter does the same sort of thing. It hunts like wild chicken, but then it's on a rotation. So the dude will have to sit on it for 3 turns, and at the end of the 3 turns, he'll harvest 3 raw white meat. So as far as balancing your economy, and that tails into like a seasonal economy, right? Think crops, because that's kind of that's mini seasonal. So you can't just necessarily have that guaranteed income every turn. Maybe you set up 3 different. This is what I did. I'd set up 3 different fowl hunting areas, but on a delay of the 3 turns, so I could at least get a steady income sort of going, right? This is when it gets really interesting. And I'm still talking early game tech, but it becomes a city. It becomes much bigger on the efficiency per resource. So I mentioned before that the gathering spot, you get 2 berries, right? Which barely feeds your dudes. Every dude has to have a berry each turn, or you get starvation and then you get massive negative sickness through your colony. But essentially food goes in, food goes out. So you're harvesting this raw white meat, you unlock the technology for the barbecue, and all of a sudden you can convert 1 white meat that your dudes are eating at a rate of 1-to-1, you can convert that into 7 cooked food. Or I think actually default is 3, but if you put it near a housing building within 2 tiles or whatever, so there's a lot of zoning in this. And then if you put it near the hunting spot that we talked about, so it makes sense. So as you build your town, it's going to, all your hunting buildings will be together. But if you compound the 2 of them, you end up with like this +7 bonus. And all of a sudden, you're getting 7 times value out of that. And then you set up a whole bunch of barbecues and then you go on gangbusters. So it's not necessarily about bursting your population out, which you sort of get in these games. It's more, dare I say, building tall than actually building wide. And it's quite brilliant. As far as building out citizens go, you just right-click on a house that has occupancy, and then you say, make babies. And it just sends two dudes in there. It just sends 2 random bloody guys. I don't care, whatever. It's made by Italians, so what are you? I don't know what to make of it. But, you just randomly have these 2 random villagers will come together, they'll spend the food, they'll make a kid. The kid has to raise over 4 days or something like that, right? But for freeing up 2 villages becomes part of the task, right? So you're constantly managing your dudes, but it's not finicky at all. It's quite cerebral at times. And then on the back of that barbecue example, I think there was something else I could do where I could make, I don't have it in front of me, obviously, but maybe with the villagers that were harvesting the fowl or the wild hens or whatever it was, I think you could get to a point where they turn 1 fowl into 7 instead again, right? So you'd have 7 on top of that. They've got the barbecues, So my point is that as you tech up, your dude's efficiency and their ability to turn raw resources into like this synergistic blowout becomes higher and higher, which is great because you don't see that in games. Because if you're not following what I'm saying, what this really means is as you tech up, your 1 dude is potentially 1 or 2 dudes in the production chain are potentially going to be feeding the whole village if you tech right. It's also worth going on. Obviously, I'm quite smitten with this game. In case you missed that, I think it's really quite brilliant. And even I will say this, even if you're not necessarily into this sort of genre, like a colony builder type game, you might want to give this a go, right? It's definitely worth it. I'm not going to say, well, I mean, get it on sale, whatever. Your own price point's your own business. But this might actually convert some non-believers, because this is quite brilliant how much it just seems to respect the player and their time and their mental capacity as well. It's not dumbed down. It's not pandering. What's the term? Simple to bloody figure out, difficult to master. That sort of crap, right? The prophecies or doom events from the village elder are the kind of antagonistic component. I mean, other than trying to balance in versus out and staying on top of food, what will happen is you'll have a vision, and the music and the little animations and the Simlish that they talk, it's really good, man. The music is actually quite cool. Like when the big doom event happens, this track kicks off. Like it's not exactly gonna. It's probably no one's gonna notice it or win the awards, but I noticed it and I thought it was really fun. It was really good. However, I'm not blind. A lot of people, this sort of game, they're probably going to mute it and listen to Spotify or something like that in the background. But for what it's worth, I think all the audio in this is quite brilliant. So he'll predict these doom events. He'll be like, "Oh, I've had a vision of bloody bad things coming," and they'll be associated with like a sphere of influence, whatever you want to call it. Fear is the obvious one, but you also get ones like fire, cold, like more elemental and less primal. But you have to combat these, and it is kind of board gamey. But what will happen is let's create a scenario. He predicts that there's a fear event coming, and it will essentially create a timer at the top of your screen. It's all very readable. Maybe you've got five days or something like that to sort this shit out. And the antagonistic sphere starts adding X points to the kitty. So say it's early days and it's a fear one and it's pretty soon out of the gate. It's adding one fear point to the sphere. And what will happen is you want to build specific houses and that sort of thing. Like the fear example, let's stay with that. You can get these like meeting places where you can slot some dudes and they'll socialize, right? Kind of reminds me of Dead in Vinland. Similar sort of thing, slotting and managing these less tangible psychological components to village life and maintenance. And then you can get different ones of those buildings. You can get like a more of a community shared table area, and you have to put resources into it like water or food, and then you put a couple of dudes on it and they will generate positive fear. Well, I think it's called hope, actually. I haven't really thought about it because I don't speak out loud when I'm playing this. But yeah, I believe that you generate hope and the game generates fear. But you get the idea, right? It's Pokemon. It's my bloody fire versus your water, right? And it keeps track of this at the top. And what you want to do is kind of bully out the odds to your favor. So if they're adding one fear and you're adding two hope over a couple of turns, there's a good chance that when it comes to the end of it, your bar will be at 100%, which means that the negative effect fails and you get a positive effect. However, it compounds. As the game goes on, these events add more and more, which means you need to tech up. So it forces you to keep pace because it's a doom timer. And that would mean maybe you need 10 of those bloody tables, but more realistically, you need the higher tech version. That, just as we discussed before with the hunting barbecue and all that example, you'll get to a point where one table starts generating bloody like 10 hope. So staying in front of the research tech game and keeping those tech stations manned is pretty high priority. But if you get to a point where maybe you've only filled up 60% of the bar, guess what? It rolls a dice and there's a 60% of a chance that you're going to pass the event. So it's actually all very intuitive. It's one of those things that once you see it, you sort of find yourself going, why aren't other games doing this? Well, maybe they will on the back of this. When you do start straight out of the gate, you get some sort of like gimme berry bushes. They're just a throwaway food dump. So the game is not cruel straight out of the gate. You do get a bit of a wiggle room. You get probably a week's worth of turns buffer before the game starts slapping you. There's also a developer splash at the beginning when you pick your normal difficulty that warns you, hey, this game's very, very difficult. I didn't necessarily find it super hard, but I didn't find it easy. I think it was very appropriately aimed for someone like me, I guess, who's played these sort of games before. I will say that I obviously did cover that there's so much content here and I've only gotten so far into the game. The nature of these sort of games, stopping and starting and replaying again, this is what a lot of people do. I know when I play a new XCOM, that's what I do. Like, honestly, if I'm not let's playing for a channel or anything like that, I probably play for a couple of hours and I go, oh, right, well, I've kind of fucked this up. I'm going to re-roll and start again. So in my 5.5 hours of this, I've re-rolled my village maybe 2 or 3 times just to sort of give it another go. But to me, and people might relate to this, and this is why I want to review this way. Okay, sure, I didn't play the game for 10,000 hours. I didn't get 100% achievements. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but at least I give a more organic, honest perspective of my time with it for the money spent. And this is the example. I re-rolled the village a couple of times instead of just powering through, because this is how people play these games. I'm pretty sure. You could weigh in and tell me otherwise, but normie people that like to play these more run-based, where you're trying to optimize it and learn, I feel like the organic way to play it, generally, I could be totally wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure the organic way to play it, I used XCOM as yet another example, but that's a touchstone that people would be familiar with. Once you figure out the moving parts a little bit, quite often you're compelled to go back and start again and try it a little bit more efficiently. So that's what I did. I opted to re-roll it a couple of times, and I'm having a blast. Right? I am going to keep playing this off channel. Maybe we'll stream it or something like that. But look, the waffling aside, yet another great game. This is good. I'm playing some other games at the moment. Not all these reviews are going to be positive. I'll fucking tell you that for sure. But this game is brilliant, and it is worth every second that you put into it, and it's worth the money as well. So I guess that's my review, and I might as well stop waffling on about how good it is, and you should go get it. All right, bye.